everybody, Leah B. Jackson here with my pro gamer pal Greg Fields, also known as Idra.
Hey Leah.
Hey. Today we're going to show you the best way to play as Witch Doctor in Heroes of the Storm. All ready, Greg?
Yep, ready.
All right. Okay, here we are in try mode with Witch Doctor. Why don't you tell us about this character and its abilities?
Witch Doctor is a really unique hero in that he is a spellcaster, but he's much more damage-oriented than utility-oriented. Usually you get like a Tassadar or a Tyrande or something. They have a lot of spells, and those spells help out their team in terms of utility, CC, vision, and whatnot. But almost everything he has is damage. He has a bit of lockdown in his zombie wall, but he puts out a ton of damage and really, really needs to be respected for that. Also a very good pushing hero. His passive, Voodoo Ritual, is every time he does an attack or uses an ability, it applies a bit of poison damage on top of the base damage. But also, if a poisoned enemy dies, he regains 1% health and 1% mana, which is great sustain for him. And there you can see the little bit of additional poison damage being done on every auto attack. So if they die while they're under the effect of that, then you get the credit for that, and you get the additional regen. So that's a very powerful sustain tool. Now, as for your spells, your Q is Court Spiders. That launches a little bomb of spiders at an area, does impact damage, and then the little spiders run around chasing things, doing damage. They do not have an AI. They attack whatever's close to them. They don't have very good range. You can upgrade them, but usually it's not worth it. They're basically just a little bit of extra damage. Your W is your lockdown ability of sorts. It's called Zombie Wall, and after a bit of a delay, oh, I actually missed it. After a bit of a delay, it pops up a big wall of zombies that can be kind of difficult to land, so it helps if you have a setup, but not at all impossible. And that's just pretty good. Obviously, it's not like a stun or silence. Your enemies can continue to do things while inside of it, but they are held in place, which is very important for your next ability, which is called Plague of Toads. And what that does is it launches a cone of poison toads, and when they hit an enemy, they explode, doing a pretty significant amount of damage. And now the reason that that synergizes so well with your W is if you get up close, well, we'll just demonstrate on the tower because it's easy. If you get up close and shoot it, all of the toads hit the tower at once. If you can get it right up close in the narrow part of the cone, that means that you do just an absurd amount of nuke damage if you can hit them up close and personal with those toads. I'm going to run back in lane quick and demonstrate your ultimate. You're going to get Ravenous Spirit. Gargantuan isn't, it's just a very underwhelming spell. It's not really worth taking. Ravenous Spirit is not great, but it is reasonably strong, and it just spawns this spirit, and you have to channel it, so you are very vulnerable during the time, and it just runs around slowly. You can't control it. It does damage in an AoE around it to everything that is nearby. As I said, it's not the most impressive thing, but if you have a team locked down, it's a pretty good amount of AoE. It's just good additional damage, just part of your kit. Everything is focused on dealing a lot of damage. That's pretty much all he does.
Cool. Well, now we're going to take a look at his talents. All right, so now that we've seen Witch Doctor's abilities, which talents should we grab for him to play him effectively?
Well, at level 1, you have a couple of options. Blood Ritual increases the regen you get from Voodoo Ritual, and that is usually my go-to. That's a very strong ability. Just the additional sustain, double the sustain. Very, very worthwhile. The other option is Bribe. Bribe is great on any kind of utility hero, any kind of hero who doesn't desperately need something else. So if you have no one else on your team is getting Bribe, I'd recommend you get that for sure. And then another bit more like gimmicky, pigeonholed option is Demolitionist that causes your basic attacks to destroy the ammo in the enemy structures. That allows you to push very, very quickly. That falls off very quickly in the late game, but if you do have a very quick push-oriented strategy, and there's some specific descriptions of very well-planned out strategies like this available online, so you can look that up if you want to do something like that. If that's what you're aiming for, Demolitionist is a decent option. Otherwise, get Blood Ritual or Bribe. At level 4, I'm going to recommend you get Poison Enemy. It does an absolute ton of damage, and it synergizes really, really well with Witch Doctor's kit. You have an insane amount of burst damage, and you push really well. So you make almost the ideal split pusher. You want to just sit in lane and spam down waves, get your regen going, put out all of your damage. And having that amount of burst and solo kill potential makes you really, really difficult to deal with, because the enemy doesn't want to just send one person to deal with you, because it's very easy for you to kill them. But if they send 2 or more, then they're putting their own team at a disadvantage. So that really helps your solo kill potential, which is very important for the style Witch Doctor like to play. And then at level 3, tend to get Gidbin. I'm not entirely sure how that's supposed to be pronounced, but it's just a general buff to all of your abilities. Increases the duration, as well as the effectiveness of your passive Voodoo Ritual. So, given that he uses all of his spells quite a bit, it's just a general increase, a general buff to them. A very good, useful, all-around trait. Then, for the ultimate, as I said, Ravenous Spirit. It's the better of two not particularly impressive ultimates. Gargantuan is just kind of terrible. It really doesn't do anything at all. So you should definitely get Ravenous Spirit. Just keep in mind you are channeling during the use of it, so you have to make sure you're in a very protected position and that you're not very vulnerable while you're using it. Otherwise, it's pretty easy to shut you down. But at the next talent, we have a couple of things that deal with that. I recommend getting one of the two defensive talents at this level. Ice Block, I believe, is the ideal. And what you do is you activate that to gain invulnerability for 3 seconds. So if anyone looks at you wrong, you just cast that, activate that, and then you are completely invulnerable for 3 seconds. And by the time you come out of that, you can actually interact with the fight. Most of their cooldowns should be blown, a lot of the damage should be focused elsewhere, and then you're free to just spam your abilities and do what you do. Sprint is a little bit better if you're completely focused on split pushing. Split pushing is a bit iffy in the game, in my opinion. It's very much so focused on 5-man versus 5-man. The maps are pretty small. It's very hard for you to actually get away with split pushing. However, if you are going to focus that, if that is how you want to play, you almost have to get sprint, because otherwise you have no escapes, and that's the only way you're possibly going to get out if you're pushing really deep and the enemy comes for you. And then the other two abilities, or the other two talents at this level, are just buffs to your W and E, just a little bit of extra damage or utility out of those. Not really all that needed. You can play around with them if you want, but really I would recommend Ice Block. It synergizes much better, and you're very squishy. You need something defensive, otherwise you're just going to be focused down and die. At level 16, I really like Rewind. His spells are very spammable. They do a lot of stuff, and you have a good mana pool to support them, so it feels useful to be able to cast them all lots of times. Also, the buffs to his Q and E at this level, they aren't the strongest unless you've taken previous spells to or previous talents to kind of set these up, so they're not all that great. You can get them if you want. As I said, play around with them, see what you particularly like. But overall, I feel like Rewind is going to give you more than focusing on any one of the spells. And then at level 20, you can get Bolt if you need a little bit extra survivability. If you're going for that split push, and sprint isn't just isn't enough mobility for you to get away. Otherwise, go ahead and get Annihilating Spirit that increases the range of the spirit by 50% and increases its movement speed. This allows you to cast it from a much safer position, as you can obviously do it from farther away, and you have a lot more room to work with. That means you don't have to be up in the fight channeling a spell, just pretty much begging the enemy team to come mess with you.
So for the Witch Doctor, it seems like at first you want to start going all damage, but towards the later tiers you want to have a little bit of your points spent on some defense.
Yeah, otherwise you're just going to end up getting focused down and die immediately.
So with this talent build in mind, how would you say that you should play Witch Doctor effectively?
Early on, he's actually a great solo laner, freeing up your team to roam around a lot and look for kills elsewhere. You basically just sit in lane and spam your abilities. It pushes the wave, it does a lot of damage to towers, and once you get level 4, you have definite kill potential. If you catch somebody in your zombie wall, you just run up, do the point blank toads, cast your spiders for good measure, and you put the poison on them. You're going to kill pretty much anyone who's at all squishy early on. Ton of burst damage, and your kit really lends itself well to split pushing throughout the game because you push so well. You do have that one-on-one kill potential, but the problem is split pushing is very hard to execute in the current meta. That's something that I think we should continue to try and play around with, try and make it work, particularly on bigger maps where it's harder for you to get caught out while doing the pushing. But generally speaking, the safer thing is once the initial towers go down, you go join your team. And then in team fights, you just spam out the first wave of your spells. Once you have Rewind, you do 2 waves of your spells. Then you find a safe place to sit, and you channel your ultimate. Try and get as much damage as possible. The only thing is you have to be careful that you're not counterproductive with your zombie wall. It does block teammates as well as enemies, so it's very possible to trap teammates or to block them out of the battle. Important to note, you can drop the zombie wall by pressing W again a second after the cast time. So just be watching. Make sure you do that if it's necessary. But other than that, he's very straightforward. Just use your spells and you do a lot of damage. Really fun, strong hero, but pretty simple. And as for counterplay, he is very, very squishy. And he doesn't have any kind of escape mechanism. So if you can get on him, you can probably kill him. Respect his one-on-one kill potential early on, though. If you're alone, you might not really want to engage him. But if you have any kind of backup, go for it. And the thing is, he has pure damage abilities, which makes him very strong early game, but they do not scale nearly as well as right-click damage or as lockdown abilities into the late game. So the longer the game goes on, the smaller impact he really has. He doesn't get a damage upgrade at level 20 for his ultimate. It's just a utility upgrade. So really, early on, you focus him down, try and get him out of fights. Later on, he's harder to kill because he'll probably have Ice Block, but you really don't care that much. He's just not doing nearly as much as other heroes in the fight. So you can kind of afford to ignore him unless he's an easy kill.
And there you have it, guys. But remember, this is our best way to play, and we want to hear yours in the comments. Be sure to head over to Greg's Twitch channel for more pro tips, and for everything Heroes of the Storm, stay tuned to IGN.